All right, guys, welcome to this episode of the Beyond the Peak podcast. I'm here with my co-host, Oliver Wolf, and our man, Jorge. Jorge, welcome to the show.
Woo! Excited to be here. Let's rock.
To give you guys a little bit about Jorge, he is a real estate Airbnb investor and coach, and is passionate about helping people create time, financial, and location freedom with Airbnb and real estate investing. He retired at the age of 29, became a millionaire by 30, and now earns multiple six figures with his Airbnb business. Exciting, my man.
I'm excited, man. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. It's truly an honor.
Love it, brother. So I want to dive into this with a story, because there's a story whenever I think of you, Jorge, and just to give a little bit more background to that bio, actually, Jorge and I worked together about 2.5 years ago. And I got the honor of witnessing the beginning of this journey when he started this online business. And I remember, I think you were on Udemy initially.
Yep.
Yeah.
It was 3 years ago. And yeah, started with Udemy.
And how much were you selling your course for?
150, and nobody was buying it.
150 and no one was buying it. And now it's a multiple $1,000 program that transforms people's life. And how many students do you have in your program now, Jorge?
We have over 2,000 in total.
2,000. So man, to be there at the beginning and to witness zero and now to see 2,000 is truly remarkable. And I remember something that really showed me the kind of man that you are is that call that we had where you there was this mindset shift that you stepped into, and it really led you to enrolling a bunch of people in that program that day. And I honestly can't really take much credit for that. Yeah, sure, I reflected some cool stuff, but really what that showed me is how much what happens when you make an internal shift. And I thought that was so powerful, man, because there was no going back after that. You made one shift. It was one little thing, and then it was game over. It's like no one's ready for Jorge now. And I just respected that so much about you.
Yeah, that was a huge mindset shift. And from there, it was like a rocket ship. Everything just took off.
Love that, man. One of the things that's really cool about you is I've always seen you prioritize your family and make sure that they're supported along this process. And I would love for you to share this story about when you first got your wife to quit her job, because I know that was a big thing for you. And I'm really curious as one, how did you know that you were going to be able to do that from day one? Because I know you wanted to make it happen, but you didn't have 2,000 students. You only had one. You didn't have any really at that point. Maybe you had a few, but I thought, you just decided that you were going to support your family. Your kid was coming, that you were going to make sure that they were supported, and she was going to be able to quit her job. And I know that she was in the corporate realm. Is that right?
Law enforcement.
And she was working her ass off for how long?
Yeah, she was working, she had this 6-year career making six figures as a law enforcement officer. She went to Long Beach State University, got her criminal justice degree, and then went into that field for 6 years. And she was working 12 to 16-hour shifts. And because it's a federal job, it could have been 15 minutes before her shift was over. And then her lead would say, hey, you have to stay for another full shift of 8 hours. And you can't say no.
Wow.
And, a few years prior, she was told that she had 2 autoimmune diseases, right? So with this health challenge came a lot of fatigue, and just a whole bunch of other things. And so immediately we knew ahead that when we would get pregnant, it would be a high risk pregnancy, right? And so in June of 2018, I was selling my program on Udemy for like $150. I was doing meetups in person. Nobody would buy my program. I'd sell like maybe one a week. And then I got introduced to like high ticket coaching. I ended up joining Scott's program. That's where you were my one-on-one coach. And so we started working together in August. But in June, I remember telling my wife, I said, hey, how would you feel if 6 months from now, you never had to work again? And my wife what is the oldest of three siblings. So she sort of became the parent at a young age because her dad was not really in the picture. So she had to step up. So she always had this, drive to be a provider and to sort of have control of being able to provide. So when I told her that, she was like, what do you mean? Like, I got my degree, like, how are we going to do it? But I knew that we wouldn't be able to have a great quality of life if I didn't have to, be in a 9 to 5 and I had time freedom, and she didn't. I said, like, for us to truly have freedom, like, our whole family needs to be free. So she was like, well, if you can, basically, she said, if you can prove to me and show to me that you could replace my income, then I'm open to like exploring that possibility. When August, I joined the program. And for the first 8 weeks, all of August, all of September, we basically created the real system, high ticket program, started selling it for $3K. And then in October 3rd, I got my first client for $3,000. And within 6 weeks, I enrolled 12 people at $3K. So I did a $36,000 launch. Amazing. And the biggest day was $12K. And I was like, look, it normally takes you like a month and a half, 2 months to make this. Like, we just made it in a day. And I showed her the stripe and she was just like, how did you do that?
That's amazing. Love that.
On December 6th, right, 6 months later, like we planned and manifested, after that was her last day that she ever went to work. And so it's basically, we're coming up on next month will be 3 years that she quit her job.
So powerful, man.
Yeah, I think that was a big driving factor, right? Because when you talk about having a strong why, well, my why was the health of my wife and our future child, and how their health could be impacted if she was working under a high stress environment, 12 to 16-hour shifts. And so, yeah, that was the driving force that really catapulted everything.
That's wild. It's so interesting to me, that whole like model of her working in that way. It's so clearly unsustainable. I'm shocked that that's even a way to operate. But I guess when the system is desperate, they don't have another way.
Yeah, I think it's really unfortunate because at least in her position as a federal employee back then, they don't get any time off for like any maternity leave. So if you want to take 3 months off, you basically don't get paid for 3 months. It's crazy. And obviously not all industries are like that, but at least as a federal employee, yeah, they don't get anything. It's really, really bad. And so that's why I love entrepreneurship, because it just gives you like flexibility, gives you options, time freedom. And I feel like at the end of the day, that's what matters most. Like me being able to be able to take my daughter to her gymnastics class, swimming class, like on a random time during morning, day, evenings in a week, like it doesn't matter. And to just have that flexibility, I feel like that's what entrepreneurship makes possible.
100%, brother.
Yeah, something that comes up for me in that story that's really important to highlight, that I feel like was almost brushed over a little bit, is when you said like, hey, look, honey, like, here's how much I produce in a day, give or take. And it takes this much time for you, right? Like, that's the big thing. It takes you this much time to do this much, right? And it's that huge disassociation of time to money versus value to money, right? Because what your wife was offering was time for money. What you were offering was value for money. Right. And I think that's a huge point that I've actually, even one of my coaching clients, that was a big mind shift that he had. He kept thinking like, well, if I put in more time, I can make more money. Or more importantly, they'll think, if I didn't put in enough time, it's not good enough, as though value and quality directly relates to time. Right. And so breaking that mindset, I think, is so powerful to realize that, again, nothing to do with time. It's just about the value.
I agree. It's beautiful.
How is she doing now that she's had all this free time? Does she is she just stay at home all day, or is she working with you, or how's that going now?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I think this happens in all cultures, but especially in the Latino culture, when a man is the financial provider, then the woman immediately is like the housewife, and she does the cooking and cleaning and laundry and kids, and it's really normal. And I knew that I didn't want her to feel that type of pressure. I didn't want her to have to do things that she didn't want to do. So there was a goal that we set, I think it was maybe about a year and a half ago. because like I would always do the dishes at night because like she didn't like doing dishes, but then she would do this. And so we would alternate, but again, we were basically focusing on low income producing activities, right? Like $15 an hour activities. And so when you look at the value of time, like not all things are created equal. So about 18 months ago, I remember telling her like, hey, give me about a year and a half and I'm going to make it our goal that we're going to hire a housekeeper that's going to do all the cooking, laundry, ironing, like pretty much anything and everything that needs to be around the house. And that way, neither of us have to do it. And so in March of this year, we hired a full-time person and she's here. It's 7 months now, Monday through Friday from 9 to 5. Yes. She's incredible. We basically have a full-time chef. She makes our green juices and like our ginger shots every morning and lunch and leaves, food for dinner and cooks and cleans and laundry. We don't have to do cleaners anymore. And when I really broke down the numbers, I was actually paying more for taking care of all those services. And now it's actually a big money saver. And now going back to your question, right now, my wife, like we just closed on 4 new home purchases, investment properties for Airbnb. And of course, with that, there's a lot of, because we're self-employed out there, they always have a lot of loan conditions and they want all these letters from your CPA and P&Ls and just a lot of documents, a lot of paperwork, a lot of tedious, but important, necessary stuff, which is not really my favorite thing to do. So she's basically the CEO of the house. Anytime there's like paperwork and mail and documents and LLCs and corporations and tax stuff, accounting stuff, legal stuff, she pretty much like oversees all that stuff and she has it all in files and keeps track. And yeah, like I make the money and she protects and keeps the money through all the,
I love that.
Yeah, the power couple. I love it.
So it works really good because, her personality is she's very like detailed. She's like,
really makes sense with her career, right?
Yeah, like she's a really good operator, very structured, very organized, very analytical. And I'm like big picture. I'm like, just yes or no. Like don't go into the details, just yes or no. And so we work really, really well because I recognize her strengths, she recognized my strengths, and we just stay in our lane. And it just works really good. It's like we're like the yin and the yang,
Yep, 100%.
Amazing.
Powerful.
Love that. This actually, it's a pretty good transition to a question that came up for me as I was watching some of your stuff. And one of the things that you're clearly very passionate about is it's not just about financial freedom, it's about intergenerational wealth. That's a huge part of what I'm seeing is important to you, is that intergenerational, or to be defined in a different way, leaving a passive income empire for your family after you're gone, and then helping others to do the same. The concern I've had with this, and I'm so curious, especially as you mentioned this, nanny or housekeeper or whatever you want to call it, is how do you plan to like support your daughter in still having the hardships, I guess you could say, for lack of a better word, to grow into a strong woman? Because with all the ease that you're now offering, right, with that care and freedom and all this stuff, and versus the life you had, which was completely the opposite, right? And maybe we'll get into your story at some point, but your story is the opposite of that. So that builds you up to be such a powerful, goal achieving, all that kind of stuff sort of man. How are you going to make sure that your daughter can have some kind of an experience where she can again become that strong, powerful, divine woman?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the way it's already taking place, even though she's only 2.5, like I'll give you an example. There's a lot of times where she'll fall, right? And sometimes I've recognized this pattern where like she'll fall, and now at this age, luckily she puts her hands, but there's this phase when
yep, I know all about that.
Are just learning how to walk and they don't know how to put their hands, so they bang their head, and like that's like the worst time. I didn't like that part, but now she's old enough where, she arches back, puts her hands, so she doesn't really hit her face anymore. But she'll fall, and then she'll look at me. And I remember there's times where I'm like, oh, are you okay? Are you okay? And all of a sudden she's like, and then she starts crying, right? And then there's been other times where like I look at her and I'm like, oh, you're okay. Like, just get up. And then she doesn't cry, and she just gets up like nothing happened, right? And so I realized that my reaction is basically creating a habit. And so one of the habits that we practice, right, whenever she falls or anything, is I tell her like, hey, like, are you okay? And she's like, yeah, I'm okay. And I'm like, okay, sounds good. Get up. And I won't go and pick her up. I have her get herself back up. I feel like that's really important because otherwise I'm conditioning her that she needs me in order for her to get up. And I feel like I'm starting to develop a mindset of like independence, right? And so there's just a lot of things that we practice. Like there's a lot of times where she's like, oh, daddy, like I want ice cream or I want this or I want that. And so she almost has to earn it. I'm like, okay, well, you're going to have your lunch first. We're going to do this. And then later on, like we can go get ice cream. And so she learns to kind of, know that she's going to get what she wants, but it's going to come later. And then I feel that as she's able to understand later and she's like, wow, like someone's doing our dishes, someone's doing this, I'll teach her the value of delegating and automating and building a team and building a system because, she can do whatever she wants as she grows older, but I want her to learn entrepreneurship as an option. And then eventually when she's old enough and able to understand it and say like, hey, look, if your goal is to make $100,000, you divide it by 2,000, that's $50 an hour. You shouldn't be doing anything that makes you less than $50 an hour. You should focus on high income producing activities. And that is why like we automate. But, again, going back even, further into your question, it's really about like earning things, right? Like instead of saying, hey, if you do these dishes, you're going to get, $10. I feel like that's teaching them how to earn the money. Instead, I'm going to say, hey, read this book and you'll get $10. Read that book and you'll get $10. And this way their mind is actually growing. And I think more than anything is teaching them how to recreate the same wealth that we've created. I think that's a million times more valuable than providing just the money, right? To be able to sustain it, because making money is really a muscle that you develop. And that's why you can give, Jim Rohn says, if you give someone $1 million, best they become a millionaire really quick.
Yeah. Something that's interesting. And I like how you mentioned that last part. You said, teaching them how to do it like what you did yourself kind of thing. And I heard of this story that was interesting where there was these kids that were intergenerational wealth. So it was like their grandparents were the business magnates that made enough money that not only their kids, but even the kids after that were financially safe. And they were completely uneducated, had no idea how to do anything with money because it was so easily done for them that when they showed up to this accountant, it was the accountant that was telling the story, they literally didn't know the first thing. And they're in their 40s, 30s, 40s. Right. And so that's a huge fear that I personally have. And it's great to hear from you what it is that you're kind of doing to make sure that, hey, you know what? Yes, we have it, quote unquote, easy, but here's how it became easy. It wasn't always that way.
Yeah. One time I was on, I forget the name of the app. What's that the app where people are just like talking nowadays? The Clubhouse. I was in a Clubhouse.
Right.
Just as a listener, and you had Ty Lopez, Grant Cardone, like all these big names. And they were talking about how they're not leaving any money, like zero, for their kids. And so they were talking about this thing. They say the first generation makes it, the second one enjoys it, and the third one loses it.
Yes, right? There you go.
I actually got to, what was that, David?
I was just saying that's powerful. I've never heard someone say that.
And so I actually got to experience this firsthand where 3 years ago, my business partner and I purchased this house that was pre-foreclosure. And a long story short, the family, they were losing the house. They stopped making payments. All the utilities were off. It was in really bad condition. When we bought the house sight unseen, and when we opened the door, I was like, where are the HGTV cameras or whatever?
Wow.
And what's funny is, or interesting, is that the family showed up. We got to meet them. They came in a brand new, like whatever the year was, 2018 Toyota Corolla, like a high-end upgrades. They had the newest Jordans, but here they are losing the house. And the property was under this trust. And when we looked up, the grandfather, he owned apartment buildings, houses, barbershops, billiards. Like you could tell this man was a very wealthy and savvy, financially, savvy man. And so he passed down the assets, but he failed to pass down the knowledge. Which
yes, that's it.
Couldn't carry and hold, again, lift, being financially savvy it's really a muscle that you build over time. Like if you say, hey, Jorge, bench press 500 pounds, I die. Like there's just no way. Well, it's the exact same way with money. And so he passed down like this heavy amount of assets that they couldn't carry because they hadn't developed the muscles. And so that's why I feel like that it's really important more than anything is to teach them how to fish and teach them how to recreate it. So that way, if they lose it, they can make it right back.
Yeah. It's almost like shifting from intergenerational wealth to intergenerational wisdom. How can you pass down the wisdom of the previous generation in a way that empowers the next generation to recreate the same path? And I feel like, that's what the education system attempts to do miserably, doesn't do it well at all. But I feel like as families, we get to, be the ones to pass down the intergenerational wisdom. And Jorge, another thing that I see you're doing, and to what you said, Oliver, about making sure they learn hard work, you're already putting your daughter in gymnastics, karate, which naturally in these physical sports, she's going to learn the value of pushing herself. She's going to learn what happens when she practices. She's going to learn what happens when she continues to work on the same thing over and over and over again, and eventually ends up exceptional. And then money's, like you said, is the same thing. So if she could learn how to build a muscle, she could then learn how to apply that to another muscle, which is the financial muscle, the money muscle. And if your wealth can then be passed down to support her through that process of creating her own wealth, then she's set up to be for a pretty powerful future. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, powerful stuff.
Love it, man. I'd love to start diving into some stuff around Airbnb, because obviously this is your jam. There's not a lot of people in the world who are teaching this. There's a lot of real estate investors out there. There's a lot of conversations about real estate. There's only a few people that I know of, at least, maybe you know of more, but a few people who are really talking about making it with Airbnb specifically. And that's what your whole business model is around. That's where a lot of your investment properties are around. And from what I understand, you literally seek out investments for the purpose of Airbnb for yourself. And so I'd love it if you could share a little bit more about that process specifically. And for those who might even be considering investing, why might they want to step into the world of Airbnb versus flipping homes versus that world of things when it comes to real estate?
Yeah, so I actually became a student at the Rich Dad Education company back in 2015. And a lot of what these, sometimes the gurus talk about is like, hey, go into, wholesaling, make quick buck, and then go into flipping. And then you can go into having rental property. So then you can finally create passive income. And I feel like most strategies out there, right? Like whether it's having a real estate license, helping people buy and sell, wholesaling, flipping, it all requires you to be trading time for money and always chasing the next paycheck. And it's basically the same rat race, just a different wheel, right? And the only way to truly create time freedom is to make money while you're sleeping, or to make money, to be able to generate an income thanks to your team and system, even while you are physically not working yourself. And I feel like nothing has been able to accomplish that more than like owning or controlling real estate. And so that takes us into the next topic, right? Like the most popular strategy for Airbnb is subleasing, right? It's the simple process where you get permission from a property owner in writing and then put the property as a short-term rental on Airbnb. And that usually requires you to, pay the first month, the deposit, furnish the property, sign a 12-month lease. And if you're renting the house for, say, $2,500, but then you're able to make $5,000 on Airbnb, then the spread is basically, your profit. And so it's a great way to get your feet.
All right, did you say this is the most popular strategy on Airbnb? Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah. So
I literally didn't know this was even a strategy. That makes so much sense. But as long as the owner is okay with it, which I'm assuming that's part of the challenge.
Exactly. And so it's about pitching correctly, getting permission in writing. And so you want to ideally own, but if you can't own, you want to control the real estate asset through a contract. And that's where subleasing comes in. So most of my students today get started with a subleasing strategy or co-hosting, which is where you manage other people's Airbnbs, get a percentage of the revenue, get a piece of all the upside with none of the downside, right? So you got the subleasing, the co-hosting, and then of course the purchasing model. Now, the truth is most people are not in a position, to purchase. So I always say, hey, do what you can with what you have where you are. And so subleasing is really a great way for people to learn the real estate business, start generating passive income, learn how to build a team and a system, and really dive, get their feet wet in entrepreneurship in general. And so most of my students are people who are 9-to-5ers, sick and tired of being overworked, underpaid, trading time for money, sacrificing time away from the people they love. And they want to create time freedom more than anything to get their life back, to be able to be there for, their kids or their family or travel, to have options. And Airbnb is a really great way to kind of dive and to start, building that entrepreneurship experience.
Love that, man. I love the simplicity of that model, and how it's so applicable to really anybody. If you can't go ahead and buy a house right now, there's another opportunity to sublease. Even if you can't do that, there's another opportunity to co-host with other Airbnbs. And I love that, you teach people who are coming from any space how they could make passive income with Airbnb. Now, what do you typically see, Jorge, as like the general income that people can make stepping into this, even if they're starting out? Let's say they're brand new. What do you typically see from each category? So whether you're buying it, whether you're subleasing it, or even co-hosting it.
Yeah. So with co-hosting, I would say like what's most common is probably like $1,000 to $2,000 a month of like profit, right? Co-hosting. And with the subleasing and purchasing, the actual cash flow from the property is very similar. And so that could be anywhere from like 2,000, as low as 2,000 to as high as like 7,000, just depending on the property, the location, the quality of the home, how many people you can host. But I would say like 2,000 to 7,000 is the range with a sublease or a purchase. Of course, when done correctly, right? So we use all these softwares that look at revenue, occupancy, city ordinances, and all that stuff. But when you select the right property and the right location, and you got the right team and system and pricing automation softwares and all that stuff, 2 to 7K is the range.
That's impressive. That's freedom for someone from just one property.
Yeah.
All right. And I'm guessing you have students, Jorge, that start with one, but then move on to 2 or 3, or what do you typically see with your students?
Yeah. I always talk about having a well-diversified portfolio. So like right now, I myself have 17 Airbnbs, and like 90% of them, 90% is half and half on the subleasing and ownership, and then like 10% on the co-hosting side. And so I always talk about having a well-diversified portfolio, meaning people will often reach out to me and say, hey, I own this property. Can you just manage it for me? And we're like, sure, why not? No skin in the game, no money out of pocket, a piece of all the upside, zero downside. And I get a piece of whatever comes in. It's pretty much guaranteed. And obviously I already have a team and a system in place. So like, I don't even have to go to the property. I send our in-house manager to go and look at the property, evaluate if it makes sense, if we want to add that to our portfolio, and basically go through all the administrative stuff. And then boom, it's just more and more cash flow. Right. But yeah, I think again, going to what you said earlier, David, it's such a great business model because there's also people like I have one student right now that's purchasing $5 million worth of real estate. So obviously the guy's doing really well for himself, and he went straight into the purchasing side. He saw the potential. He heard me speak at a mastermind, joined the coaching, and right now he's buying $5 million worth of real estate in Arizona. And obviously most people don't do that. But on the other hand, you have some people that say, hey, I can get started with the coaching, but I literally won't have any money after that. And it's like, great, let's start with the co-hosting, teach you how to manage other people's Airbnbs. And then again, that middle portion is really the subleasing. So I feel like there's a place for everybody.
I love that. So I actually have myself a friend that's also my real estate investing sort of mentor. His name is Alfonso Quadra, and he's taught me a lot of things. One of the big things he taught me is when it comes to real estate investing, there's always a way to make money. The question is whether you're coming in with money to offer into the deal or time. It's usually one or the other. And so in your case, what you were just saying, right? Like these are people that don't have the money, but they have the time. And that is a value to someone who has the money. Right. And so it's always about finding where you can fit. But the reality is that in real estate, there's always a deal to be made. And so I love to hear about how you thought of, because again, the standard world right now is buy a house, rent a house, da, da, da. You figured out how to create that same atmosphere of, again, whether you have time or money, there's a way to make money in the Airbnb space. Very, very cool.
Yeah. You know, they say there's no such thing as problems, just situations, right? So when I started my coaching program, 100% of my students were purchasing real estate to then do Airbnb because that's all I had done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Single mom, 2 kids who wanted to join the program, but she didn't have the credit to purchase real estate. And I said, hey, look, I've learned, I kind of got my feet wet a little bit into this subleasing thing, and I kind of explained how it worked. And I hadn't yet done it myself, but I had, kind of learned a little bit just from like research.
Cool. Yeah.
I said, hey, look, I feel like if you're committed, I'm committed, and we'll find a way for you to start generating passive income. Sure enough, she locked up her first sublease, and within 18 months, she started making 6 figures, and she quit her job. And now she's like a stay-at-home mom with her 2 kids, literally traveling like every 2 months. She's like going
That's
to
amazing
places. And so again, that situation created an opportunity, because then I went and got 7 subleases myself. Then I started teaching it and say, hey, how would you like to create? How would you like to build an Airbnb empire without owning property or without needing to buy? And that's when people are like, wait a minute, I always thought you needed to buy. How does this work? And then the coaching business just exploded after that, because there's a bigger pool of people who want to start without owning due to limited, capital.
And I just want to reflect that whole frame of mind that you came into that with, right? Because that is the entrepreneur mindset in like a nutshell. There's a problem, there's a challenge. So many people can look at the problem and challenge and accept it as defeat, accept it as that's just the way it is. I have shit credit. I guess I need to go and build my credit up before I could do this. That's the linear path that we think of. But as entrepreneurs, we find ways to look outside of the box at the exponential path that we could potentially take by solving the problem. And, it's like the world's most wealthiest people are the ones who solve the biggest problems. And I love that you looked at that and said, how can I solve this? Here's this woman. She has 2 kids. She's struggling. Can I help her? Can I support her? Actually, there is a way. Let's work together to do that. And I just want to honor you for that, man, for being willing to just get back on the ground, get off of the horse of the CEO of your business, and just be like, you know what? Let me relearn again. Let me see if there's something else here for my clients, for myself. And then you did that, acted on it, and now she's getting to live a life of freedom. So I just love how much you embodied the mindset of an entrepreneur in that process.
Yeah, it's really powerful because, there's different, I won't get into too much details, but there's a lot of different financing programs for purchasing real estate. And really the 2 categories are owner occupied, right? Meaning you're going to buy something to live, or investment property where you're going to buy it to rent it out. And they have different payment structures, different down payments, just different requirements. And so what happened is at the beginning, in order to get a better return on investment and due to limited funds, all my students were buying properties to live in, but then renting them out. And so as we started growing, had a conversation with my mortgage lender, and he was like, well, we both had this conversation like, hey, we can't be doing this because you're not really supposed to do that. And there is something called mortgage fraud, right? Where if you buy something to live in and then you rent it out and they find out, like it's not a pretty scenario, and everyone who was involved can basically get in trouble. And before that conversation, the coaching program was really doing great. And then once we had that conversation, I feel like sort of like my world came crashing down. I was like, oh my God, like the business is going to fail. It's going to suffer. I can't keep doing this. We're going to get in trouble. Like, what do I do? And man, I couldn't sleep for like a couple nights. I was so worried. And that's when that whole situation came in about the subleasing. And we literally grew by 400% within 12 months after that. And like, I never imagined that the subleasing model would turn out to be such a blessing. But I realized that this little, known strategy is really what most people were looking for. And so when I started talking about that, like I said, we grew 400% and things just blew up and went to a whole other level.
This is actually such a perfect transition for one of the questions we wanted to ask you, which was a lot of people, a lot of entrepreneurs, right? Well, I won't say it's easy, it's funny. So it's possible to have explosive growth like this and have them buckle down and actually, fall apart, right? Like they can get overwhelmed. They can go, they really bite off more than they can chew, all those kinds of things. I would love to know, how was it that you're able to handle that explosive growth in a way that didn't, or again, hey, maybe you did actually sacrifice too much and looking back, you're like, you know what, I overdid it a bit. But like, what was your experience going through that explosive growth? What are some of the takeaways that if someone's, potentially going to be facing explosive growth, how can they be best prepared? What are some pitfalls, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I think one of the there's like, it's a loaded question. I got so many phases for this, right? But I felt like
For
phase
sure.
one is when I joined the program with David, I remember a lot of the messaging was like, hey, are you stuck at 30K a month and want to get to 50 to 60K a month? This is the program. And then when I reached out to Scott, I was like, hey, I don't even have a coaching program, but can I do this? And he's like, yeah, if you've got the backing, the dinero, he's like, we can make it happen. We got on a call, signed up on a payment plan, and I joined the first coaching call. And this gentleman was like, yeah, I'm stuck at, 30K. I don't know what to do. I can't. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, this guy's stuck at 30K? Like, it was like some first world problems, right? I started getting to like the 50K a month. And so while in Mexico on our baby moon, I reached out to Scott and I said, hey, I'm ready for the next level program. Signed up for that. I went straight into the Wins channel on Slack and I see people celebrating 100K months. And I was like, that's possible? Like,
Amazing.
I didn't know you could make 100,000 a month, like in any business and even really in a coaching business. And I just keep going through the Wins channel and I see this young couple and they're like, hey guys, we just hit our first 400,000 a month with no ads. And I was like,
wow.
What? I think that's the first thing, right, guys? I'm pretty sure you guys know that story of the banister guy. I forget his first name. Where
the thermometer,
like, what's that?
I was gonna say maybe
Roger Bannister. No one had ever ran a mile in under 4 minutes. They thought it was impossible. And then once he did it, everyone else started doing it too, right? And so I had this sort of like this ceiling. I was like, I never even thought of like 100. It was just completely out of this universe, maybe in 10 lifetimes from now. So first, right, like one of my mentors once said, if you can't change your friends, change your friends. And so I started by surrounding myself in environments of people that were generating these results. It just made it possible for me to feel like, hey, I could do that too, right? That was really like the first step. And then the second step was my advertising budget, right? Because for me, I've always relied on both organic and, well, at the beginning it was organic and then I started doing paid and now I rely on both. And so we were doing basically investing $3,000 a month into advertising, like Facebook ads, things like that. And we were doing that probably for about a year. And we were generating 50 to 60 with only 3,000 a month. And then I was like, man, that's a really good return on investment. Like, why aren't we doing more? And so I had this fear, right, of increasing my advertising budget because all the fears that entrepreneurs have, like, what if I lose it? What if I lose money? And until the beginning of the pandemic. So like in April of 2020, I was like, you know what? I was like, let's increase this budget. Like I had a conversation with my ads guy, which you introduced me to Carlos, David. And I was like, bro, I've realized that this whole time you and I have been bottlenecks of this business and we both get to take responsibility. Like, why aren't we increasing the budget? So literally in April, we went from 3 to 10. Next month,
big jump.
Then 50. Now we're investing like 150 to 170 a month in advertising.
Wow.
Holy
amazing.
And from 3,000 to like 175 of ad spend a month, it was mindset. The whole time, it's just been a mindset transformation. And that's really it is. Like, it's not even 90%. It's literally been 100% a mindset game, right? And then the third phase is, how do you carry, because to be able to do that, you need a big team, you need a big system, right? So I hired an operations manager. She's almost like the CEO, essentially. Like she basically oversees all the different departments. We have like 25 people in our team, from employees and subcontractors that are pretty much full time with us. And it's really just having a team and a system, and essentially having like a manager in each department that can hold all the people beside them accountable. So that way I'm able to work on the business and not in the business.
So much there, Dave. I'll let you take the mic, but so much right there.
There's a lot, man. The first process, the first reflection I have is around what you said around environment, man. That's huge. Like, and what I love about everything you're saying is how much of it is mindset. And that's always what I've known about you, Jorge, is you have a powerful way of not trying to find your answers externally, but really looking for them internally. And when you face off with challenges, you always check in first around what's happening in here in this world before you try to find an external solution. Where I feel like so many high performers and entrepreneurs and successful individuals waste so much time because they're afraid to look in the mirror, right? They want the next strategy. They want the next shiny object. They want to hire the next coach, which is all important, but it's only important if you recognize that you're going to have to change through this process. And I think you so powerfully recognize that through continuing to transform your environment, being around people doing 30K a month, then 50K a month, then 100K a month, then 150K a month. And then the same thing with advertising, allowing yourself to spend more than you thought in your mind was initially possible is a huge breakthrough that you have to make, because all of your money shit comes up. Now it's not just earning, but to spend that money, to have to completely transform that it's not spending, it's investing, and it's going to lead you to more opportunity is huge. And then the third, allowing yourself this space to bring in the right people. And I'd love to have a follow-up question around that, because you recognize that you cannot hold everything alone. And so, you know, you knew you had to bring on an operations person to help with the team and to really help scale things up. But I'm curious, and maybe you didn't experience it, but I know entrepreneurs do experience this with control, right? This is your baby. This is your money. This is your family. You're the visionary. How were you able to step into bringing someone in, letting go of that need for control so you can be the visionary of your company and guide the ship without being caught up in the weeds?
Yeah, I love this. Yeah, this is awesome. Well, I think one of the things that I know for sure is that I don't know everything.
Yes.
Like, I think I've gotten
forward
really
right there.
good. I've gotten really good to know that I don't know everything. And, you know, I'm a guy who graduated high school with 4 Fs, 1 D, did 7th grade twice, dropped out of college. Like, I'm not really supposed to be here. Right?
Imposter syndrome comes up a couple times.
Yeah. And, you know, I think through like transformation and just, you know, so much ongoing personal development, I've gotten really good to recognize like the different types of personalities and the strengths and the opportunities for each one. And so I like my strength is I'll jump off a building and build an airplane on the way down, and like I'll turn lead into gold. Like I'm a big picture visionary, but I recognize that the things I'm not good at, and I choose not to be good at, is like detail, organization, structure, people management, processes, documentation, all that stuff. I am not good at it. And if I try to become good at it, and if I try to do it, we would lose money as a company, right? Like I believe it was Jeff Bezos. He says he only makes 3 decisions a day, and that's it. That's it. But they're the 3 biggest decisions that becomes like the 1% of things that create 99% of the result. It's like a domino effect. And so I always hire people and bring people on my team that have strengths that I choose not to have or that are not in my nature. So I can really just focus on the 5% of activities that generate 95% of the results. And whenever I hire someone, Sometimes I hire someone because they have the right attitude. I've always said hire for attitude and train for skill, right? And so I hire someone, for example, when I started delegating my sales, and I told this person, hey, like my sales are like up here. Like I can sell better than most people because that's a strength. And I've been doing sales since I was 16. And I know that when you start, you're going to start probably here. And I know that in the first 6 months, you won't be able to do it as good as me. But my goal is that 6 months from now, you'll be better than I ever could be. So my goal is to allow space for like mistakes and a learning curve, so that eventually they get to a point where they become masters of their craft. And my focus now is coaching my team so they can carry the vision as their own. And when the team is carrying the vision as their own, that's when you become unstoppable. And so the last part is, again, the control is just allowing people to bring their strengths, because the control is one of those big bottlenecks for entrepreneurs, right? They because they think that, hey, if I want it done right, I have to do it myself, and therefore they don't hire people. They see hiring people as an expense rather than as a profit generator. And so I think it's a big mindset thing. You have to let go of that control, because there's only so much you can do, and if you don't let go of that control, you're going to pay for it with stress and your health. At the end of the day, that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Working 16-hour days, trying to do everything. And I learned that like you can get to like multiple 6 or even 7 figures by yourself working 14-hour days, but beyond that, it's pretty much impossible to have a great quality of life and have a healthy business. And when I make my vision boards, right? One time I took this course called the Life Book, and they have 12 categories, not just like the main 3 to 4. And that 12th category is overall quality of life. What do you want your overall quality of life to be? And so when you start taking this course, they're like, what's your overall quality of life right now? And like, where do you want it to be? And so I feel like giving up control and the whole team and system working on the business, not in the business, has a lot to do with being able to maintain, again, a great quality of life, which for me is the most important thing overall. Because a great quality of life means that I can be in the best health and fitness, have the best marriage, have a business that is creating impact and generating profit, all simultaneously at the same time.
There's so much, it's so funny. Like, I'm just thinking, I'm like, you've basically like summarized what Beyond the Peak is about. It's awesome. I'm like, we're going to clip that. We're going to use Jorge as our intro. Screw ours,
Yeah, feel free to do that.
But no, yeah, one of the big things that I think is so important is you're very much at the point we actually seek to try to get our clients from BTP Consulting too, which is, again, there's a lot of like the visionary or something becomes that bottleneck, and they need to understand that it's about bringing on the right leaders that can really run the organization for itself, because you are not the organization, right? Like, I'm not my organization, you are not your organization. It is its own entity, and we always need to remember that it's coming back to the reality that we need to treat it like its own entity, not like it is you, right? And so that was I love that. There was so much gold in that. And in fact, it kind of leads to, it's a little bit off topic, but it's just something coming back to Airbnb, kind of still lines up with it, is like, okay, so for example, I'm in Costa Rica now. In fact, this is the first podcast I'm shooting while in Costa Rica, and David is in Montreal, and you're in California, right? California. So we're all over the world right now. This brings up the question. It's like, well, can I run an Airbnb out in Montreal or in California or in, Austin or anywhere? Like, is there a way to do all of what you've been talking about in terms of Airbnb internationally?
Yeah, of course. It's really, again, going back to building a team and building a system. And like when it comes to Airbnb specifically, there's only 2 people that ever have to be there physically. And that's whoever does the cleaning and whoever does the maintenance, right? I'm not the cleaning person. I'm not the maintenance person. And then the third component, which is virtual, that's the communications, right? So for that, we hire virtual assistants in Latin America, South America, Mexico, Philippines, things like that. And those are really like the three components: cleaning, maintenance, communication. So if you have one person that is dedicated to each and every one of those things, then basically now you're just managing those three people. And so eventually you start growing a portfolio where then you hire the manager who manages the
Yes, of course.
right? It's like it, Michael Lee Gerber talks about it in E-Myth Revisited, right? The technician, the manager, the entrepreneur. And so the technicians are the cleaning, the maintenance, communication. The manager manages the three. And then the entrepreneur, visionary, just communicates with the manager so that way you can work on the business, not in the business.
Yes.
It's really about just really bringing that to life.
I love how much that mirrors exactly what you just shared that you had to do with your business. And now being in that, you can help other people do the same thing for their Airbnb business, B&B business. And I'm sure you get clients who are afraid to let go of control, or afraid to hire, or afraid to bring in other people like that, or afraid to scale like that. And you've walked the path, you've walked over the burning coals, like fucking Tony Robbins events. Like you walked in it, you felt the burn and came out the other side. Super, super motivating, man, inspiring. I love hearing all the shifts that you've been able to make on your journey. As we come to a close here, I'd love to know, what are some other final tips that you would give to the entrepreneur, the high performer, the one wanting to create a life of freedom like you've built for yourself, the one that has a vision for their life and they know they want to be in your shoes. They want to be living with the team. They want to be having a life of freedom. They want to be able to take care of their family. They want a cleaner to support them in their house, cook their meals, live that life. But for whatever reason, there's blocks, whether it be internally, 90% internally, maybe 10% externally, but probably internally. What would you give to them as we come to a close here?
Yeah. So the first thing is that you can't fix an internal problem with an external solution, right? That's the first thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so the way and also there's no such thing as business problems. And there's also no such thing as marriage problems, only individual problems, right? So when you work on yourself, all of your marriage problems seem to go away, and all of the business problems seem to go away. So anytime there's a bottleneck in the business, you can pretty much look at the entrepreneur, and then it starts to kind of, flow from there down. And so I would say, like, the biggest thing for me has been personal development, mentors, coaches, transformation. Like, again, this whole aspect of there's no need to reinvent the wheel. Just find somebody who already has the result and outcome that you desire and learn from them. And essentially you're paying for speed. Like, yeah, you could do it on your own, but it's probably going to take 5 to 10 years. Whereas you can do it in the next 12 to 18 months if you just follow a proven method. And, but yeah, I think it's just personal development, really doing the inner work, the emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence work is the number one thing that will help anyone, entrepreneur or not entrepreneur, live and create the results that they want, so they can live a life by design and not by default.
Yep. My mentor says that exact line: life by design, not by default. Cool, man. Well, hey, where's the best place people can find you? If they want to work with you, how can they do that? And then I also saw that I think you might have a freebie for our audience, and I would love to hear what that might be.
Yeah, definitely. I have a free ebook. I'm sure you guys will be able to, post a link. People can check it out. It's like it's called Passive Income, Airbnb Passive Income Generator. And people can, connect with me on Instagram. It's the Jorge Contreras, YouTube, website, all the social medias, all that good stuff.
Yeah. You said that so Spanishly beautifully. We'll make sure to type it out for you guys, because there's no way anybody knows how to spell that, at least not where I'm from.
Yes. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, hey, Jorge, thank you so much for you just continuing to follow your intuition, your spirit, your guidance, all these things, and just pushing through all the adversity. We didn't really get into your story, but I'm sure if people look you up, they'll find it. It's quite an intense one. And so it's truly admirable to see how far you've come.
Yeah, I appreciate you both for having me. This has been it's been a really amazing podcast. Definitely one of the best I've ever done.
Yes, good to hear. Thank you so much.
You guys.